Aloha, this is Rosa McAllister, and welcome back to On Being a Service Warrior, interviews with the firewalkers among us. Those who have had their struggles and yet have chosen to come out the other side into lives of service for others. Click subscribe and tap the notification bell to keep up with future episodes of this ongoing series. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to catch up with other episodes in this series, as well as other offerings in Network's YouTube channel. Mahalo, thank you, and always remember you are the light. Be the light. Hi, everyone. We are back again with another wonderful episode of this On Being a Service Warrior series. And my guest today is Siri Bahadur Khalsa. I met Siri B, as I have heard him affectionately called by many people I admire tremendously, several years ago at a retreat in Tulum, Mexico, which was offered by our mutual friend, Lara Forsythe, and her retreat company, One Yoga Global. I had heard Lara mention Siri B several times previous to this retreat, and she often said, "Oh, Rosa, wait till you meet him, you will love him." And I did, and I do. I don't profess to know Siri B well, actually, at all, and I probably know him best through social media and mutual friends. But I've come to love his very relevant posts, particularly on social media, and find them speaking to me almost in a "it's going to be okay" kind of way, and usually at a time that I just sort of need it most. So I thank you for that, Siri B. And when he created the separate America Awakening Facebook page and invited me in, I breathed a little easier knowing that there was this kind of kinship of like-minded brothers and sisters to help shine our collective lights a little brighter. And then when I put out the invitation to my first handful of potential guests for the series, I hoped and asked if maybe Siri B might be willing to join us, and here we are. So I hope the lawnmower going out there is not too loud. So Siri B, mahalo. Thank you ever so much for joining us and talking with us today.
It's my pleasure. Good. It's totally my pleasure, and I think our relationship is mutual in that. Yes, I so much enjoyed getting to spend the retreat time in Tulum with you, and then again, just I think it's really relevant and elevating to come across posts on social media that mean something other than, here's a picture of my food, which is not a bad thing to share, but I've always enjoyed what you put out. And also, it's nice to have a forum, like when I feel inspired, when like message just pops in the head and said, share this. So thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful, thanks. So Siri B, what would you say, who are you? How would you define yourself? Describe yourself.
Well, that's interesting. I guess I would say broad stroke, a yogi. And then once I go there, it's like I have to remember, different mantras and meditations and just reminders that I go through with yoga. And it helps me in thinking of myself in a different way. It's like perhaps in the past I've thought of myself as a collection of experiences. This is what I do. This is what I've done, and so as I look at what I've done, as people witness me day in and day out, then they would get to know me. But as a yogi, then that's another story, because just like one of the basic touchstones is Satnam. And Satnam means I am true, but that truth is cannot be defined, and it never changes. So if I want to identify myself, I have to do it sometimes either just without definition and without respect to time, or I identify myself by a process of elimination. Well, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. So I don't know, we can get into experiences in chapters like you suggested in our orientation. But when I think of myself, I think of myself as a yogi, and as a as a consciousness that's down here with everybody else, just playing and figuring out how do we learn how to play well together, because we know how not to play well together.
Unfortunately, we sure do. We sure do. So if I were to ask your wife, other close friends, other people, say 3 to 5 people, who is Siri B? Who is he? Or what is he? How do you think they might answer?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I am would be a teacher, in one respect. In another, even as I've thought of this superficially, it's like, okay, well, how do I answer it most succinctly and accurately? And it's like, I'm a hard worker, I'm loyal, I can either put people at ease or disturb them, just because if I get out of my center, it comes across not subtly, but I spend most of my time teaching. When I was working, I spent a lot of time listening, and in that listening, just trying to establish, connection as a friend or as a brother, or just a good friend. And now my car thinks of me differently, because when I'm in my car, there's no what do you call it? There's no filters. No filters. If somebody crosses me, I tend to let it out. But in my social context, I've kind of made it a priority to be kind. So I think overall, people probably would think of me as a kind person.
I love the humanness, and that you do vent as well. It's good to know. It's refreshing and a little bit relieving, I must say. And I love thinking about my poor car in that way.
Yes. I don't know how this will fit in anywhere, but I have been known to myself and to my wife, maybe not anyone outside of someone that I trust to see me, but I have been known to just become enraged with inanimate objects, which is kind of funny, but they're in one way of speaking, they're a safe outlet for frustration or emotion, as opposed to people. I don't like to inflict that on people if I don't have to.
I think that might be the most wise thing I've heard in a very long time, I must say. I might need to try to try to remember that, Rosa, please.
Siri Bahadur, whose life is littered with broken objects.
That's quite a visual.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That's actually very, very beautiful. I one of my longtime life teachers has been Ram Dass, and who just recently passed. And I remember him on a number of occasions, speaking about his very human qualities. I remember once I was talking with him, and I was in a bit of a funk, you might say, and having a troubled relationship with someone and trying to sort it through. And I remember him saying to me, like, "Do you hate his guts?" I said, "No." Oh my gosh, no. And he said, okay. I remember just being shocked, like, hate his guts. And then he talked long and hard about, that there were still some people in his life that he didn't hate their guts, but there was still anger and there was still stuff that he was trying to resolve. And some of it, he just hadn't gotten through. And he talked about his shoes, that sometimes he hated his shoes and he would throw them and he would curse at his shoes and do various things. And I remember being shocked, like, oh my. But that very human quality, it's refreshing for all of us to hear and to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to know I'm not alone.
No. So thinking about, you mentioned this a little bit, and we talked a little bit before about this idea of thinking back on your life and how you got to the wisdom that you have, or whatever it is you have today. And as we talked about, and as I've asked other guests, I found it really interesting to not just think about the incidents or the episodes or the events or the specific ticks on a timeline of our life, but instead to kind of think of it in chapters. And I'm wondering if you thought of chapters or themes of your life, what they might be, and what you might want to share with us about Siri B in earlier times and how you got to who you are.
Yes. Yeah. And this is not unfamiliar, but not real familiar territory for me. But as you mentioned it, and as I've been thinking about it, it does help to make sense of like why I'm here and how I got to where I am now. And like the first part, is like just growing up, even like being a young child into adolescence, is I noticed that events kind of led me to not count on the outside so much and try to find myself inside. And because there was everybody as they're growing up trying to figure out, well, how do I work within my family? How do I express myself, or how do I keep from expressing myself so I don't get into trouble? All that kind of stuff. And so, I thought that when I was growing up, it was unique that you learn how to behave at home so that you wouldn't get sent to reform school. Yeah, and and so it as I look back, as I went through it, it just didn't seem right, and so I rebelled, and it was not a pleasant experience. But I recognize, though, the early into adolescence, early life into adolescence, just having to be okay with myself and figure out what was true for me, and went from being like really into the religion I was raised in. I was raised Catholic, and just being into that, and until I left home, and then I'm going, okay, I'm done with this now. And so my life overall, if it was a book, it would be, okay, in search of spiritual relevance, just, okay, why am I here, and what is attracting me, and how do I find a relationship with this God thing? And so, I tried to make Catholicism work for a long time, tried to make family work for a long time. So my mother died when I was young, and so my dad remarried, and so it was like, dealing with someone whose, I think, main motivation was to make me strong, but strong in, like, Yogi G was a Saturn teacher. You find a lot of Saturn teachers that, okay, learn by experience and learn through discipline. And so that was my younger life, so that when I got into the Marine Corps was easy. It was like no problem. But so the first part is going like, okay, I didn't realize that my experience was to make me stronger, but that's basically what it was. And also, it was a long time before I learned to meditate, but I found myself working within kind of subtle ways of affecting. I played music started playing music when I was a teenager, and I found myself projecting it from inside rather than projecting outside. It's like the subtle thing, like when it's almost telepathic, but I'm not telepathic, but it's kind of like using subtle undercurrents. So it was, I don't know if I'm staying on in any one chapter, but the first was trying to figure out, okay, who am I and what's true, and can I make it through this time safely, and figure out what I want to do with my life. And so that was one. I guess I really started to get out more in life when I went into the military and thereafter, and just looking for that consciousness a lot of baby boomers, a lot of hippies were engaged in. Say, okay, again, looking for relevance, again, looking for identity, looking for something that would make sense for me and satisfy, my spiritual quest. So I think that's been forefront in everything. I went to high school, I went to junior college after I got out of the service, but not really for a degree or anything. And I really wasn't that concerned with a career. I just want to be able to pay my rent and buy food, things of that nature. But it was like I would read Krishnamurti and Edgar Cayce and Ram Dass and those kind of guys. And Elizabeth Clare Prophet, just looking for, okay, what makes sense for me to figure out who I am, and how do I discover that on a deep level. So my early life, figuring out, okay, how do I survive? How do I get out of the house? And then once I leave, trying to find my path and find a path that answered my questions and helped me shrug off the memories and even though everybody goes through some kind of trauma growing up, and I thought mine was not that great, but when I look at what other people are going through, mine was not that bad, right? but still, carrying, like you were talking about, okay, we're moving so that we can clear cellular memory. We meditate for the same reason, just to kind of, I found meditation a way to get out from traumatic memories and to figure out who I was and how to move out of the uncomfortable spaces. It's like for anyone that's done drugs, and not stuff, not the weird drugs that are available now, but the hippie kind of stuff. It was a matter, after a while, it just go, okay, well, I get up, I smoke some pot and eat, go to sleep. And in between, I watch how I relate to people. But every day it's the same cycle over and over again, kind of being introverted, then getting stoned and being extroverted, then going to sleep and waking up and doing the same thing. And the introversion and extroversion weren't necessarily inner expressions of myself. They were um, just all I knew. And it wasn't until, and then I started practicing yoga. I said, okay, when I was going to school, some guy came and he gave a lecture on vegetarian living and yogic lifestyle. I said, okay, that's got to be a step in the right direction. And it was. And I practiced yoga and yoga classes for a couple of years. Sometimes steady, sometime off and on, until I finally decided that after having a son and being divorced and then kind of not having him so much, that okay, I want to clean up. I want to figure out how do I refine. And so then I just moved into a community, and that's what I did. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a peer group to rely on, I don't know how long I would have done that. If I had just not moved into a community and just went to yoga classes every once in a while, I probably would have gone for 6 months and then went and done something else. Maybe a couple of years later, come back. But in that realm, is like I had a peer group and just the encouragement. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. How are we doing as far as on track and all of that?
You are amazing. It's fascinating, really. It really is perfect.
Okay. So then I found within close relationship, it's like I had been married, had a son, we got divorced, and then moved into the ashram. Still had my son for a while until I started teaching him and about the yoga thing, and realizing that him living in two different families put a lot of strain on him with two different value systems, two ways of being disciplined, two ways of being encouraged, or whatever. And so pretty much I lost him for a while, but I got married again. And in that relationship, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I have a sane relationship? How do I have a relationship where I actually feel secure and I can provide security for someone else? And it was really hard because the lady I married got ill and was going through, having cancer. And in between, we had a child who passed, and then my wife passed. And then I'm going, that whole process, I was trying to figure out how to get an even keel and how to figure out how to change how I was thinking, acting, and reacting. But it wasn't until getting remarried later and doing like peer counseling that somebody explained to me habit patterns, ways of thinking, ways of perceiving, the same tapes playing over and over again based on, just insecurity being installed, whether it was racism, ageism, sexism, classism, any of that stuff. It wasn't until I started to recognize patterns that I'm going, oh, whoa, wait a minute. This is something I can take the yoga and the meditations that I've been doing and apply it to these patterns and have a contradiction to the pattern and have a suggested alternative outcome to dealing with this stuff. And that's when I started teaching like all out. I felt like, before that I could direct people through a kriya or a meditation and especially if someone new to yoga, I felt really good. If it was someone that had been doing yoga for a long time, I'm going, well, I don't know if I'm good enough for that. And so, but once I became aware of the power of yoga to alter patterns, to alter uh, the outer hypnotism as well as the self hypnotism, and reroute it, and actually find that my earlier foray into singing and projecting the etheric space, or projecting feeling into a space using music, I was able to translate that into, okay, what is this etheric space? How do I manipulate it, or how do I play around in it? And that's when teaching became fun. And not only in showing other people how to find some peace and find some leverage to shift what they wanted to shift, but as I found myself going to teach and being upset, I could take that into the class and leverage myself out of it. So there would be time. It wouldn't happen a lot, but it's like every once in a while, I'll go to class. When I'm on my way driving there, I'll be doing my mantras. I've been trying to get clearer so that energy and direction could come from my teachers through me. But the times that I was getting my emotional workout in the car from driving, and then my just whatever was askew in my life, as soon as I got in the classroom and tuned in, it was like, okay, we're all gonna come out of this a little different. And I found that I learned a lot like that. So yeah, now, and in between, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, because I'm 72 now, so it's like I'm going, damn, it took a long time to figure this stuff out. Why didn't it happen when I was like 26? And
oh yeah.
And it's like, and then the information comes, dude. There's no hurry. Everything happened the way it's supposed to happen. Just keep on going, and but now it's like integrating Kundalini yoga and any other belief system. But I've been just getting into actually trying to, or investigating and moving along the path to figure out how to do what the Christ was trying to teach people how to do 2000 and something years ago. It's like he was describing, where he was coming from, how he got there, how to think about it, how to make a shift. But the messages just would come through with a little static, a little not quite so clearly. And now the messages are a lot clearer. And I find that what my teacher taught me is using different language, but the same lessons and the same guidelines of all the great teachers, across the time. So now it's, hey, how do we have fun doing this? And it does, and it, yeah, especially since I retired. 2000, I think I retired in 2011, so it's been like 9 years. I've just been teaching yoga and doing workshops and training yoga teachers, and so yeah, it has turned into pretty much, okay, yeah, it's service. We're just seeing where we can go and do whatever it is that I like to do. And I like to do music. I like to do sound. I like to teach meditation. I don't do as much yoga as I used to. I meditate more now.
And somewhere along the line, you found gongs. Is that not true?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's a, as I got into yoga and meditation a lot, it would be the breathing. And so you're working with breath and prana there. And then the next logical extension of using that breath is to create sound. And so with the voice, I found um, uh, I could eliminate dissonance. I could eliminate things that, it's kind of like those cartoons where you see what's wrong with this picture. And so, life is kind of like that. What's wrong with this experience? What's wrong with this attitude? What's wrong with this line of reasoning or logic? And it's the same thing in the body. What's wrong with this feeling, or what's wrong with with this particular tape that plays, or this particular alignment of your body? And so I found, breath and mantra work well with that. But also, I found that in Kundalini yoga, it's like gongs, gongs rule anymore. It's like, I don't know where people go to do yoga and how many gongs are available, but in Austin, almost all the Kundalini people are playing some kind of gong. And if the studio doesn't have one, they're bringing their own, or they're getting them to buy one. And that the whole idea of having a tool. Now, this is interesting in that with mantra and sitting and breathing and trying to get into a still space, I think one of the keys was finding that I could relate to my identity. I could find out who I was, and also relate to other people to help them investigate that mantra I talked about, Satnam. Okay, the truth that I am, undefinable, unchanging. How do I get there? Because most of the time, we are pretty much engaged almost full time, either in the body or the mind, body or thoughts, not even the mind so much, but the body and thoughts. So thought form and brain waves and all of that. And so as I investigate Satnam, then I go, well, okay, what part of me is beyond body? What part of me is beyond mind? What part of me doesn't change? And what part of it is beyond description? And finding that space. And, like in yoga, we call it shunya. We call it, and some people call it the zero space. Some people call it, to still be still and know that I'm God. And so I can either do that with breath and just becoming real quiet, let the body become still, let the mind kind of cycle down a little bit, just pay attention to it. And there are meditations to become aware of, okay, let's see if we can become thoughtless or approach it. But the gong will kind of take you there like a shortcut. It's like, okay, if you can exercise enough where you can lay down and be still, that's one thing. You'll lose bodily sensation. But when you hear the gong, when you become immersed in that envelope of sound, then it forces you out of your mind. And when you can get out of your mind and out of the body at the same time, then it's like, okay, I just went somewhere. I can't tell you where it was. I can't tell you what it felt like, but it was pretty cool. And so, yeah, I play gong more than I experience somebody else playing gong, but that's okay, because I don't want to brag, but I don't know anybody that plays much better than I do. Right?
That's awesome.
And this is not against anybody out there who's playing gong. But I think I play for me. I play for the way I like to experience it, and it's amazing. Before we got on the phone, I just had delivery of a sun gong that I went to Memphis to pick out on Tuesday, and it just arrived today.
Oh,
So
awesome.
that works. That works with the Crown Center, where it's just an amazing instrument. So I am on a new gong adventure now.
Wow, that's awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So if you would, so what are you still working on? What do you, maybe what's next chapters, or what's happening next, or what have you for Siri B?
Well, yeah. Then the next chapter, I don't know how long it lasts. I don't know if how many chapters come after it, but there's what I'm working on is the experience that, and the yoga, another mantra that I'm starting to relate to more is like Aung Sung Vaheguru. Vaheguru is the experience of bliss, of coming into a relationship with infinity, or coming into a relationship with universal life, energy, or God. And Aung San means in every part there is this experience of bliss, and and depending on how you translate it, and I choose to translate it the way my teacher suggested, is that God is in every cell of your body. And so if God's in every cell of the body, God's in every particle of the creation. It's like, what I'm looking to do is have a direct and conscious experience of every particle of energy in the cosmos instilled with this universal life force that um, creates form by being aligned magnetically, different frequencies, different magnetic alignment that's influenced by thought. I just want to uh, be a witness to that. Be aware that the divine is everywhere. It's like Yogi Jiva. Another one of his standards was, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And it's like, that means not just other people, but everything. And so that's my chapter. It's like, if I want to know how to elevate my frequency, the messaging has come that, okay, if you want a higher frequency, you look for the lower frequencies and neutralize them. Yoga, meditation, in that you take the activities that create lower frequency, like judgment and criticism and belittlement, all of that kind of stuff. It's like the 10 Commandments that tell you what not to do. It's like, yeah, you don't do those, because when you engage in those, it makes you heavy, it makes you distracted, it applies static, and it puts you in a mental loop where you can't feel the very essence of your life force. You can't feel that initiator of creation that's inside. And so I'm just looking to become still. And yeah, I found I've always been looking for the alternative Christ teachings. Like, okay, the Bible says this, and this. Nothing against that. It's all real cool stuff. But like, I know if I wrote a book and somebody was going to translate it, or if I said something, somebody's going to interpret it in one way. Is that the way? Are people going to hear from how what I said to somebody is expressed? Is it going to be the same thing that I said? Probably not, right? It's like we all have our own palette of perceptions. And for some of us, the palette's like really small. For others, it's a little bit bigger. But you figure that if the palette of your perceptions covers 10 degrees, well, then there's 350 degrees all around it that I'm missing. And so, anyway, I'd just be looking, okay, what did he say? Who can I trust? And just depending. I've gotten more and more refined sharing of like the Christ message, and I think I found one that's really good, and so that's what I'm up to. Just okay, refine. Um, hmm, Yeah, and refinement through experience, and it's like we all know, and especially I know when I'm off track, because it turns into some kind of tantrum or some kind of funk, and so it's really easy at that point just to go, okay, what causes that? And I used to blame it on other people, but now, for me, I got to clean up my act, and then um, begin to use my prayer, my projection, and my energy, to clear anything behind me, anything in front of me. You know, if I can work with my cellular memory and clear it up, then I can work with ancestral cellular memory and clear that up. And as we work backwards, we also work forward. So um, that's the chapter I'm in now.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I can't wait to hear more and see more that comes from you and what these next chapters are and life and all of that other. Um, so if I could take you back to the first question that I asked.
Uh-huh.
So given all this that we've talked about here, given all this, so who is Siri B? Who are you?
Um, an irresistible force of consciousness, pretty much.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm going to choose. You know, it's like ask anybody that question, and they get to choose who am. What. It's like I have a friend that says, yeah, we're all spirits, we're all consciousness, walking around in meat suits. It's like, yeah, you see this? Just some bones and meat and blood, and I'm just finding that, yeah. Well, how do I want to identify the suit? Do I want to identify as the suit? And I'm realizing I can't identify as the thoughts because they're not mine. Can't identify as the elements because I'm borrowing those, and they're always shifting, they're always changing and regenerating. And so now I'm just going. No, I'm like a ray of consciousness, and um, with the quality that will encourage and provide the support for other people to find the same thing and to shift the outside world by shifting the inside world. I just, the whole America Awakening thing was about, okay, how can we all get together and like really wake up and discover that nobody's doing anything to us. It's funny. I'm sorry. I got to share this story. It's like, every once in a while I go see this guy up in Fort Worth, and he's really a beautiful person, very conscious person. And so he says, hey, I walk around every day, and when I start my day, my prayer is for the divine to um, bring me what I need for my highest good, for everybody else's highest good, and just let me recognize you in my experiences. Who comes to me? What comes to me? So based on that, he's walking around downtown Fort Worth one morning, and this guy comes up to him. He says, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" He says, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And he says, "Is that building over there? Is that where you go to register as a sex offender?" And my buddy goes, whoa, good one. It's like
Oh my.
you had to pick that way to remind me who you are. And then he also had to realize that he had no idea why this guy wanted to know that. He would have an idea of what he thought it was, but he realized that he had no idea. And as we go through experiences like that, as we go walk around and with that kind of attitude, okay, how are you going to manifest today? How is the infinity going to manifest today? And am I going to be able to recognize you? Am I gonna be able to take a joke? Am I going to be able to um, elevate a frequency? And so um, th- that just leads me to this whole thing. We're all waking up. We're all waking up. It's like, no, Washington's not going to do it. Congress is not going to be able to pass laws that elevate people's consciousness. We just have to do it ourselves. And the more that I can have patience with whatever's coming out or coming in front of me, um, the more I can add to that momentum. That's okay. We're in Aquarius. We're going to develop it now, just for this pure experience, the joy of being. And how do we do that with the least amount of stress and pain? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And what a great story of that. Yeah, the presumptions that we put in there into the mix and everything else with a question like that.
Mm-hmm.
Registered as a sex offender. How many of us would?
Yeah. 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 And so yeah.
I think it's, yeah, I think it's, I mean, give us a lot to think about, but it's really true. It's up to us and how we respond. We can't control the who comes up to us and asks us what building is what or what have you. But the only thing we can control and we can really work on is the how we might respond, and that's hard.
Yeah, and what he said was that the divine or universal life sends us what we need. Actually, universal life energy sends us what we ask for, and that's the other thing. It's like if I need to be aware of what I'm thinking all the time, because what it assuming the whole cosmos, particles of energy aligned magnetically, and that alignment comes from brain waves and thought. So whatever I think leads me to experience it. If I experience it enough, I believe that that process is purely is actually true, is defined, and that's reality. But it's only reality because I'm thinking that way, because I'm attracting what I think. And if I thought that guy was a pervert, then he becomes a pervert. If I thought he wasn't a pervert, then he's not. And it doesn't matter, pervert or not pervert. Um, if I think he is, or if I think he isn't, I'm correct, because that's what I believe is what it is. And so, um, yeah, for me, purity and consciousness is just watching what I think and weighing it against the the lower frequency to the higher frequency, and that frequency of service is pretty cool, and we're finding that more and more people are doing that. And it's like, yeah, if we want to change anything, if we want to change racism, if we want to change the power structure, if we want to change anything, we have to see why we attract it the way it is now. And it's like, hey, you can like the last president, you can like this president, you might not like either one, but as a national consciousness, as a global consciousness, we attract all of this stuff, because as we see it, it's like we attract stuff we don't know that we're attracting, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it isn't until we see it in technicolor in real life that we have to go, oh my God. Um, it's like, if I'm going to say I'm not racist, no, I am. We have a racist system. As we can figure out how to dismantle that system, then we can go, okay, once we achieve that, there won't be any more racism. Once we achieve peace, there won't be any more war. But it's like, we have to police our thoughts and then police our emotions, and not so much police the emotions, but just know where they're coming from, know where all the bad weather is coming from, right?
So true. So true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's very, very true. Thank you. Yeah, this whole idea of this bringing in what we need, bringing in what we need to learn. That's a tough pill to swallow, man. You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, what are we talking about? But it's so true. It's so true. And I think it helps. I know for me, that was one of my huge awakenings that, you know, these are lessons that I need. And I thought I learned it already, but not so much. And here we go again. And it's a deeper dive each time. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think as as we gain in wisdom, as we gain in experience, we'll recognize that we self-correct. You know, it's like we have autocorrect mechanism, and it's just as long as I think somebody's doing something to me, I can't change anything because I'm not. I realize now I can't change other people. It's not hasn't been working yet, so it probably doesn't work. But as I pay attention to myself and realize that okay, I'm calling this to myself, and as I begin to forgive myself that, then I'll eventually forgive other people, and all the stuff that we consider ugly and sinful and trespassing just becomes so many mistakes, you know. And mistakes are not bad because energy is never destroyed; it just changes form. And so it's like forget about it. Don't worry about it. You know, just do the best you can in any minute, any moment, and if something goes wrong, just kind of look at it and go, "Hey, I did that."
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, a good day in a good moment, sometimes that works.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but it works more and more frequently the further we go along.
Absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much for your time, for your sharing, for your honesty. Thank you so much. This is, you're a wonderful, wonderful soul, wonderful friend, and I thank you ever so much for joining with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Rose. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate your work you're doing. And one of these days, you know, we're going to work on our way over to Maui, and I will cast my shadow on your doorstep.
I sure hope so. I would love that to happen. Yeah, but there's an extra room awaiting you right back there. It's not so
All
big,
right.
but it's right there, and the ocean's right there. Just right that away. That would be
Okay.
awesome. We'll look forward to that. So,
Okay.
so much.
Very good.
This series on being a service warrior is brought to you by Networks for Training and Development Incorporated via funding by the Philadelphia and Northumberland Counties Behavioral Health Intellectual Disability Services in Pennsylvania, and with the help of Joe Sterling of Joe Doggy Productions, Waikapu, Hawaii. Many thanks to all our guests and fellow firewalkers for sharing their wisdom, learnings, and joy with us.